Hi everyone, my name is Mark Moikins from Big Mountain Studio. As you can see, it's a beautiful day here today, the mountains in the back. And I want to thank you guys for watching my videos, and I hope you enjoy my next tutorial. Thanks. Hi everyone, my name is Mark Moikins from Big Mountain Studio. And today's video is going to be an interesting one. I'm going to show you how to transition from one set of colors to another set of colors in a gradient. And this was actually a request from one of my subscribers who asked me to take a look at the Instagram login screen, and you'll notice behind the word Instagram there's a gradient. And if you look at it long enough, you'll notice the colors transition or change. So as you can see from the application I built, I figured out how to do it, and I developed two different methods on how to do this. One is easy and one's a little bit harder, but both are effective. Now, as you can see from the application I built here, this is similar to what Instagram does, where the background transitions and it's a gradient and it changes colors. And what I did was increase the speed so you can see the transitioning colors. In Instagram, it's barely noticeable. It's a very slow transition. So I increased the speed in this application just so you could see what I'm talking about. And this application is basically one of my projects that I built for a design challenge that I'm doing. And it was on the subject of what's trending. So I kind of took the theme of Instagram and had three different categories of what's trending around me, what's trending around my country, and what's trending around the world. Okay, so let's get into how I did this background here. Method one. I just basically use an image and I animate it going across my screen. Very simple. And I didn't come up with this idea until I was actually making the gradient in Sketch. So I wanted to see what colors Instagram was using. So I went into Sketch and I kind of mapped out all the colors in my own gradient. And then that gave me the idea. I'm like, hey, could I actually just use this image in my application and slowly animate it from one end to the other? So this is what I did. I imported the image into my assets catalog, and you can see this is the color transition right here. It's pretty small. But I took it into my main storyboard and I put it just behind this top part right here. So if we go into here, I actually do have it here. It's just not installed. Using the installed property, that's a good way to just hide something and then show it again. So here's my gradient. And look at this. When I zoom out, you can see how big this gradient actually is. And all I'm going to do is animate it from one end to the other. So let me show you how to do that. Now, the first thing I think we're going to need is an outlet. Yeah, we're going to need an outlet. So let's create that outlet. And I'm just going to call it gradient view. Okay. And then I have a function right here. So when the view did load, it calls this animate background color. And that's what I'm going to use. Okay, so let's go back to full screen on this. Give ourselves some more space here. Okay, and we're going to use UIView.animate. Oops, animate. And for this one, I want one of the animate functions that has options in it. So this one doesn't have options, this one doesn't have options, but this one does. So let's use this. And you can tell it has options because you can look at the signature right here. You can also hover your mouse over and see the full signature. And you can see options right here. So let's take that. And remember, for your time interval, it's going to be really long. But for the purposes of demonstration, I'm just going to use 15 seconds. Normally what I did is use 60 seconds, and that seems to be a good time. There's going to be no delay. And we are going to have some options here. And one of the things that I was telling you about is we want to animate it all the way to one end and then reverse it so it goes back. So in order to do that, we need the auto reverse on. And another thing that I noticed too is when you do these animations, the default animation option is this one right here, curve, ease in and out. And what that means is that has to do with the speed of the animation. Ease in means it starts off slow and then speeds up to the normal speed. And then ease out means it slows down at the end. So curve ease in out means it starts slow, speeds up until it gets to the end, then it slows down toward the end. Well, we don't want that with our animation because it'll be 3 different speeds when you see the transitioning gradient. So what we want is we just want a curve linear that keeps the speed the same from start to finish. Okay, now there's one more option that we need. If we leave it like this, what'll happen is we'll animate it all the way to one end, and when it gets to the end, it'll auto-reverse and come all the way back, and then it'll stop. But what we want to do is we want to repeat that animation, and it will just keep going and going and going and going. Okay, here's where our animation will actually take place. In order to do this animation, we're going to do it like this. Okay, so it's gradient view, and then we want to change the transform property. And we're going to do a CG-affine transform. And basically what this is this allows you to do 3 different types of transformations on an object. You can rotate an object, you can scale it, which means it makes it bigger or smaller, or you can do a translation, which basically means a repositioning. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to use translation to reposition it or move it from side to side, right? We're going to use this. And if you have any more questions or you want to learn more about CG-affine transforms combined with animations, it's a great way to do animations. I highly recommend it. I have a video called Fun with CG-affine Transform Animations, and you can watch that and gain more insights as to what affine means and what transforms do. And I show you a bunch of examples on how you can use it to do really cool animations. Okay, so what it's asking for here is how far do I want to change my object on the x-axis? And that's your horizontal axis, right? So this is what we want to change, is this one right here. But I'm not going to give it a value right now. I'm going to come back to that. And on the y-axis, we're going to keep it at 0 because we're not going to move it up and down. So what I want to do is I want to create a variable for this actually. I'll call the variable x. And I want to create a separate line for it because it's going to be kind of long and I can step you through it more easily. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to move it over the width of that image, right? So if I come here and I say self.gradient_view, and I want to get the width of this, I could just go into the frame and look at the width. And what I want to do, if I leave it like this, the x is a positive number. So what it's going to do is it's going to move it to the right. Well, I want to move it to the left. So I need it to be negative. But there's one more thing I need to do. So let's put negative in here. I'm going to put parentheses around here. You'll see in just a minute why. If I have this go the full width of the image, it's going to go all the way to the left edge of the screen. So it's actually going to go off the screen and then it's going to come back. I don't want the image to go off the screen. I want it to stay on the screen. So what I need to do is I need to subtract the width of the device, which I can just get from the view and look at the frame and get the width from there. Okay, so that should do it. So let's, I have to clean this up first. We don't need any completion handler because we don't need something else to happen after the animation is done. It's just going to run, run, and run. And there you go. See, that transition looks pretty good, right? And if you slow it down, it's even a little bit more hard to notice. And let's wait for it to get to the very end. Okay, now it's reversing. You see it's kind of going the other way. Okay, that's great. That's one way to do it. And you can probably even change this so it doesn't have to go backwards. When it reaches the end, you could put something in the completion handler to reset the image to start from the beginning and go to the end again. But I'm going to show you how to do that a different way though. So that's one way. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment this out for now. And we're going to add some more code here. Okay, method number 2 uses UIView.transition. And I created another video that introduces you to transitions. And if you remember, transitions are taking one view and introducing an animation to go to another view. And in the video that I created, what it does is I actually have a UI view that when you click on it, it flips over and shows another UI view behind it. And that flipping over, you can animate in different ways. You can give it a page curl. Like you might have noticed in this application that when here, I'll just show you here. This is another example of UIView.transition animation. Watch this image. You see when I change it, it does a page curl down. That's a UIView.transition. And that's what we're going to use for this top part. We're going to be transitioning the colors for a gradient. And let me show you what that looks like. And this is the only way I could figure out how to do it. What I thought I could do at first was, I thought I could just change the colors on a gradient inside of a UIView.animate, like an animation like this, but it doesn't work. And I found out there's some things that you can't animate using the UIView.animate. And that's where you have to use a UIView.transition instead. And this is one of those circumstances. So let's get started in how to do method number 2 using UIView.transition. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to come here and I'm going to uninstall this, and it'll just hide it. And now I'm going to replace it with a UI view. Now this UI view is kind of special. It is a interface builder designable. It's a custom class that I built. And you guys might have seen this before. If you watched some of my other videos, you notice that I use these designables here. And I have a bunch of different designables. And all the UIView.x is a custom class. You see a UI view here, and I give it my own name. And I mark it with this attribute called interface builder designable, which means when I make changes to that UI view, it'll show up on the storyboard. And so I have some properties here for a gradient. I have a first color and a second color. And I have an option to make it a horizontal gradient because by default, it's a vertical gradient. So a horizontal gradient means the colors just change on a horizontal scale, going from left to right. I have another video that goes over this more in depth on how to do gradients. Okay, so we have this on storyboard. And, whoa, what happened to the top here? Let's resize this to make this the right size here. There we go. And let's stretch it out so it maintains the size using my auto sizing constraints here. Okay, where's all my labels here? Well, it's because I haven't assigned any colors. So we're going to assign any colors right now. And it doesn't even really matter because the code that I write that I'm going to show you will replace these colors. All right, so let's go into, and also notice I have horizontal gradient turned on. If it's off, it's a vertical gradient. So I want to leave it on. Let's give ourselves some more space here. Okay, now here's the general idea. I want to transition from one set of colors to another set of colors to another set of colors to another set of colors. And each set of colors is basically 2 colors. It's the start gradient and the end gradient. So what I need is some kind of collection to hold all of these colors. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an array of tuples. And tuples, basically all that is, it's just a fancy word that says it's an object that holds values. That's really all it is. So let's create a variable that holds these tuples. I'm just going to call it color array. Okay, and we know it's going to be an array, so I'll create the 2 brackets right here, indicating that it's going to be an array. And to define a tuple, what I need are some parentheses. And then I just define 2 variables within here that are comma separated. So if we want color 1, and we have to tell it what kind of type it is, it's going to be UI color. And then we're going to have color 2, and that is going to be a UI color as well. And there you go, there's our array of tuples. And then what I'm going to do is just instantiate a blank array right here. Okay, so now I need to populate that color array. Well, what I did is, I'm not going to code it here. I'm just going to copy and paste. And a lot of times I don't like to do this in my videos because I want you guys to see how I actually do it. So I'll tell you what. I'll do the first one and describe what's going on, and then I'll paste in the other values. Okay, so color array. And we want to append, which means we're basically adding something to the array. Append means adding something to the end of something, right? So, and this is the one we want. There's two different options. And as you can see here, this is our tuple. So that's what we want to do. We want to append a new tuple. It makes it pretty easy, right? Puts everything in here for you. And all you have to do is just add colors here. So I'm going to copy these colors that I already have preset and just paste them in here. There. And the second color is right here. Okay, so there you go. I created a tuple right here, and I appended it to the color array. So this is my first item. And if you're wondering what these are color literals inside of your code. Like if you create a new variable and you want to assign it a color literal, start typing in color, and you'll see something right here called color literal. Hit enter, and it comes up with a color picker. So you can say, oh, I want this red color. And then you can actually see the color, preview it right here in code. And just double click it and you can pick other ones. If you click this other, it brings up the more fancy color picker that you might be more used to. You can change the color there. Okay, good. So that's what a color literal is. Okay, for the rest of these colors, I'm going to paste them in. So you don't have to wait for me to do all that typing. And this is pretty much the color transition. As you can see, it ends off on this color, and this end color, or this color 2 becomes the color 1, this color 2 becomes the color 1, and so on and so on. Pretty much, that's pretty much what's happening here. Okay, now that I have this color array, I want to cycle through them, right? And in order to do that, I have to keep track of which color I'm on. And that's where this variable comes in right here. I should have deleted this before I started this tutorial, but since it's already here, I'm just going to show it to you. So this basically keeps track of the index of the color array, so I know which color I'm currently on. So when I come back and transition to the next color, I'll know which one to go to. Now it starts off at -1 because when I come into this function, I'm going to increase that number by 1. So it starts at 0. And there's something else. Now, what I could do is like this, right? I could just do this. And then when I run my code, it'll keep increasing this number more and more and more. But what happens when I get past the what is this? The 7th one? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, what happens when it gets to 7? It's going to create an error, like an index out of range error, right? Because 7 doesn't exist in this array, it's just 0 through 6. So instead of doing this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have an if statement, which basically checks what number I'm on. So if I'm on color array dot count, and I'm going to subtract 1. So basically, this color array count will return 7. And I subtract 1 because I really want this highest index. So if the highest index is 6, and this is 6, then what I want to do is start from the beginning. Back at 0. Otherwise, I'm going to increase the number by 1. Like that. This right here, this question mark and colon, is sort of like a small if statement. And what it is this is the if statement right here. So if this is true, do this, else do this part that comes after the colon. Okay, now that I have my current index, I'm going to do my UI transition, UIView.transition. And you notice there's 2 of them here. In the last video, I used this one right here. But we're not going to use this one. We're going to use this option right here. And I'll talk you through the options here. Okay, so UIView.transition, this first option is which UI view are you doing the transitioning on? Because that is going to be the container. Now remember before, if you watched my other video on transitions, what it does is it transitions not the UI view, but the parent. Well, this one's different.
this will do the transition on just the UI view that you pass in. So this is like a container. I actually need an outlet for that UI view. So let's create that outlet here. And I'm going to comment out that one here. Okay, we need an outlet for this guy right here. And I'm going to call this one gradient view as well. That's why I commented out this one. But you can see the type is different. Now, how long will it take to transition from just one set of colors to the next one? Well, for demonstration purposes, let's just put 2 seconds. But normally it will be a lot longer, right? Probably more like 10 seconds for each transition because we want it to be really slow. But I'm just going to put in 2 seconds so when we run it, we can see the color change much faster. Okay, our transition options here. Okay, in our options, this is where we actually specify which animation we want to take place. So if I start to type in transition, you can see all the different options that we have. You know, there's the curl down, which is the images. Remember the images, how they would curl down? This is the option that I'm using right here. Transition curl down. But we don't want that one. We want it to fade, so it slowly fades from one set of colors to the next set of colors. So we're going to use the cross dissolve, and this is the transition animation that will achieve that. And this is where we're actually going to put our animation. Remember when I showed you that UI view? I created 2 properties, one for the first color and one for the second color of our gradient. So that's what we're going to change right here. And there's a first color property. And we're going to get that from our color array. And then we need to know which one we're going to use. So I'm just going to use current color index. Oh, I have to use self first. Current color array index. And then from here, because it's a tuple, tuples had this cool feature that where if you click dot, you can access the 2 variable names for the tuple. So I want color 1. And then we're going to do sort of like the same thing, but with color 2. And it'll be color 2. All right, good. And that's pretty much it. And this time, we are going to use the completion handler. So this variable just means if it successfully completed or not. So after this animation did take place, 2 seconds later, because that's our duration, 2 seconds, then what we're going to do is we're going to call this function again, animate background color, just like that. And this is a recursive function. Recursive means that it's calling itself and it's going to keep calling itself over and over and over and over again. And that is why we need to take care when increasing this array index. Because once it calls itself 7 times, we need to reset it back to 0 and start from the beginning. And then it'll go through 6 more times and then reset it back to 0. So that is how I solved it, was using a recursive function and just basically calling itself over and over and over again with an array of different colors to transition to. So let's see how that looks. Pretty much looks the same, right? Except what's happening is you don't see it so much move from the right to the left. It's a transition, so it's kind of staying in place and it's moving, like fading in and out to different gradients. So you can see the difference between the 2 methods. One method is just one big image and it's slowly moving and it looks like the colors are slowly changing, when really all it is just one static image sliding across. And the second method has its own advantages, where it's a lot easier to change in the future. If you want to add more colors or take away colors, you can do that just by changing the array here. And it just calls itself, so it'll keep going and keep going. And if you look at the performance of both, like this one's running right now, right? And if you look at it, there really doesn't look like this, there's no CPU usage. One doesn't perform better than the other. They just have some trade-offs as far as like what you see on the screen. They're both like this, there's no memory leak, there's no, it doesn't keep going up and up and up. So they both perform the same from what I can see. So now that you know the differences between the two, you can make your own decision. Do you want to see it actually sliding across, or do you think this is cool enough where the colors just change and fade from one to the next? All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and consider sharing it with your friends if you want to show them something really cool. And consider subscribing because I'm going to keep coming out with new videos like this. All right, thanks, guys.